You are listening to the Body Charge podcast, and I'm your host, Sandy Sanderson. Welcome to the Body Charge podcast. Why grow a food forest in your backyard? The modern lifestyle seems to be getting ever more stressful with mounting financial pressures and environmental exposures. More people are becoming magnesium deficient, which then causes a cascade of other symptoms and premature aging. How can we afford to get off that treadmill and back to a more enriching and enjoyable life? My special guest today is Elizabeth Bruckner, author of the Homesteader Mindset. She holds a Master of Science in Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. So welcome aboard, Elizabeth. Lovely to have you on the Body Charge podcast.
Thank you, Sandy. It's great to be here.
So my first question is, this modern treadmill of stress and toxins that we have happening, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. What kind of effects are you seeing that it's having on people and their coping mechanisms and resilience and ability to, deal with whatever presents? How does it affect them?
There are so many ways that the body, mind, and spirit is affected by this modern treadmill. And I like that you're using that term because it is something that's mechanical. It's not moving at a natural pace, and it causes us extreme disconnection. And I would say that disconnection is from our bodies, our communities, our environment, and our internal expert. And I think we can talk more about that because we've been taught to only trust the studies, only trust the experts. And when you're on this treadmill, you don't have time to realize that you have an innate capacity to tune into your body and see what is working and what's not working. When you're on that treadmill and you're not able to slow down, it's very near impossible to know what is needed and what is beneficial to you. So what happens is you're on the treadmill and you're getting commercials about how this one little pill can fix it, or this one little diet secret can make you all better. And because you're on that treadmill, you don't have time to stop and really connect with your body. And that's the problem with disconnection. And you talked about in another episode, someone had mentioned natural ways of healing. And you mentioned, yes, and one of the best ways is communities. And I think that we have lost, as a whole, we have lost our connection to communities. And that's a very dangerous place to be because our bodies, the human bodies, we're social beings. We are meant to be in community. And so the book, The Homesteader Mindset, really delves deep into practical solutions for rebuilding your community, for becoming more connected, and also for slowing down to figure out what is the best next action for you to take.
Do you find that we have these parallels going on? I always look at the synergy of everything. So, you know how we have a community in our gut microbiome, and the healthier that gut and digestion, the more diverse the microbiome and the more relationships there are between the organisms that support our body. And we have more of them than we have our own cells. So we're really dependent on them. Isn't it very similar to our earth and all the people on the earth and all the different cultures? And if we look at the earth as being like our gut with a whole myriad of different cultures, and it's really good that they're different and all providing different gifts towards the whole support of that whole microbiome. Do you see that as a wonderful synergy? And then it shows you how disconnected we are today because that microbiome's having a constant war with itself, right? We're like an autoimmune disorder on the planet.
Yes, it is like an autoimmune disorder on the planet. And I don't think that humans in and of themselves are the villains. I think that there's an imbalance. Just like we would say that one of the biggest issues is candida overgrowth, it's not candida. Candida is actually quite helpful in your gut. And so when we remember that it's balance that we're looking for, because a lot of people in the green movement will be like, well, we just need less people and we need, we're just doing such awful things and we're terrible. And it's like, well, if we are able to do things like permaculture, which is from you're in Australia, right? It's from your
Yep.
country.
Yes.
Permaculture was born there. And Bill Mollison would always say, like, we're not the problem, but we can be we are part of the problem, but we can be the solution. If we model our lives and our backyards after nature, it's amazing the things that you can do. Now, in terms of looking at that metaphor of community and diversity, I would also say that it's important to have people in your lives with different skills. For example, as a homesteader, there's many spokes to homesteading, and most people be like, "Oh, so you cook your own sourdough bread? You bake your own sourdough bread?" I do not. There is a baker at the farmer's market that has like 2 or 3 ingredient sourdough bread. He ferments it for 48 hours. My husband loves it. I don't eat bread, but my husband loves it, and so I don't make sourdough. And that's because my community is diverse and I have someone that has that skill and I don't need to do it all. And I think a lot of times when people want to make positive change in their lives, they often think that it's kind of like a black or white. You're either all in and you're all out. And I will say that if you're on that treadmill, the best thing you can do is just do one little success at a time and build on that.
I think we've been programmed to be separated.
Yes.
I, and I have the feeling it's like a predator organism, going back to the analogy with the gut, is like a pathogen that's
Mm.
come in and infiltrated. And you mentioned candida as well. So candida overgrowth is not so good for you.
Mm-mm.
And the reason is because it then, in its overgrowth state, morphs into a predator. And little tendrils come out of that morphed organism and start to pierce your good cells and suck the goodness out of it. And what candida can do as a parasite in that form, in that metamorphized form, is coat the membrane of the cell it's stealing resources from with a protein that disguises it from the immune system. So the immune system doesn't even recognize this cell needs to be killed off and replaced with a new one. It's gone, oh, yeah, well, everything's going well, fine, nothing to see here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what a parasite does. It doesn't want you to know it's there. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you get a mosquito bite, it injects like this numbing thing so you don't feel the needle going in. You don't
Mm-hmm.
feel the leech sucking the blood out of you because it's got that numbing. It does not want to see, it does not want your immune system to see it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what do we do to prevent the overgrowth? Why does it overgrow? And so, a lot of researchers have worked out that it loves an acidic environment, and that's why sugar feeds it, because sugar produces more acids. Then we go to anaerobic metabolism, and then we're not burning the fat, which is really efficient use
Mm-hmm.
of energy, and gives us more energy. But we need oxygen to burn the fat. We need magnesium and oxygen. But if it's an acidic environment, you can't get the oxygen dissolved in a lower pH. You need an alkaline pH. So you see, everything comes down to metabolism. And in nature, the healthiest organisms, healthiest animals, have a balanced pH with a little bit more alkaline, because that's the electrical system that needs that environment to work to push through the life force energy, your brain, your heart, all your organs, your blood circulation. In fact, the blood, if it's getting a little bit lower on the pH under 7, starts to get thicker, and it clumps, and it gets like harder to push through. That pushes blood pressure up. So we need to do our housekeeping maintenance in the body. We need to clean up the mess. We need to detox the waste so the electrical system can come back, the pH can go back to normal. And that's, in a sense, what permaculture does when you
Mm-hmm.
set it up so that you're allowing nature to do its programmed thing. It finds that beautiful balance, doesn't it? Can you explain a little bit more how that happens in the permaculture system?
Absolutely. And love that you're connecting the patterns. That's one of the most remarkable things that human brains can do, especially adult human brains, is see patterns and be able to learn from them. So Chinese medicine was an observational medicine. They created all of these herbs and treatments based on watching nature, and that is what permaculture does. I do want to say, and I have some questions about magnesium. I hope we have time for them because there's
Sure,
some interesting
absolutely.
questions. So, the one thing that I will say is, when we're talking about the pH level, we also have to look at, which you talk about a lot in your episodes, is healing and sealing the gut. Because if you've got this permeable gut, you're actually, even good foods can go in and can create havoc because they haven't been properly digested, and then they end up in your brain or in your spinal cord, or in all sorts of places. So a lot of patients will come to me with chronic lower back pain, and once we clean up and detox their body, it's amazing how they went to a doctor and the doctor said the only thing that you can do is surgery, and within a few weeks their body is healing themselves. And that is the remarkable thing about our own internal expert. Our body knows how to heal. We just need to give it the appropriate amendments to do so. So if you try to run a car on water, the engine's not going to work. If you try to run a body on toxic chemicals, which people are calling food, it's not going to work. You need real food. And two of the things that are my favorite, and I promise I'll get to your permaculture question, but two of my favorites are kefir in dairy, like fermented kefir, which I have actually behind me somewhere. I think behind that. If you 48-hour ferment kefir eats candida. It eats candida
Um,
for lunch, as that they would say in America.
I didn't know that. That's a good tip. Yeah,
It's a good
absolutely.
tip. And also, when it comes to yogurt will go into your body and do lots of good things. And then when you expel it in your stool, that's it. You have to keep replenishing. Kefir actually sets up colonies inside your colon,
Oh,
which is
that's the
really fantastic.
difference.
So,
Yeah, I thought they
yeah,
were very much the same. Just one's a bit more liquid and one's a bit more creamy.
yes, kefir is amazing for candida. And then the second thing that I really like for candida is meat stock. That's, collagen rich meat stock that can help, again, heal and seal the gut so that
Yep.
candida can't take over. Because candida, for those of you that are listening that aren't quite sure, oh, candida overgrowth, big deal. It creates cancer.
Mm.
It is a killer. Candida overgrowth is a killer. And there are
Mm.
ways that you can step out of that. And sadly, a lot of oncologists, I shake my head when patients come in and they're on chemo or radiation, and the oncologist is just saying, just keep on weight, eat whatever you want. And I'm like, eat what? No, stop eating the toxic
Garbage
stuff.
in, garbage out.
That's right. And stop feeding. And a lot of cancer patients will say, I really crave candy bars and I'm feeling so sick, but I just want candy bars. And it's like, you're
That's
not
the
craving it.
anaerobic. Your mitochondria, they just want to keep you alive. They just want to create and produce energy. But if there's not enough oxygen in the system, if the environment is toxic, it can't produce the energy using oxygen. It can't burn the fat. That's why people gain excessive weight when they're toxic, because the
Yes.
body's trying to store those waste products in fat pockets, in bags, like plastic garbage bags,
Yes.
because the fats are insulating. So they
Yes.
protect the organs, because you need the electrical system functioning. You need the power supply moving through the body, and it can't be stuck and blocked.
A lot of people don't realize that. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with weight loss surgery, where people are losing a lot of weight, but they're not detoxifying. What's happening is you're releasing that weight, but you're also releasing a lot of toxins into your body very quickly. And that can be very dangerous to your health. And a lot of times, your body will then create a new addiction to somehow feed the microbes in another way. And so you have to be really careful with that. And I think anything that you do, of course, check with your medical practitioner, but make sure that you have a team, a healthcare team that believes in helping the body heal itself, not these quick fixes. So let's go back to permaculture.
Because this
Perma-
is addressing the environment. So we know that
yes.
the DNA and the program of the cells is there to keep you alive. So we have
Yes.
strategies pre-programmed into
Yes.
life itself to keep us alive, that if this happens, then the body needs to do that to compensate. So what we're seeing in symptoms is these mechanisms of compensation. Well, it has to go to plan B or plan C because
Yes.
something's not available, but to keep you alive, it needs to do something else, like the fat pockets. Or, in other people, they can manifest as hyperactivity, or they may go into diabetes. And
Acne. Acne's a way for the
yeah,
toxins to
through the
release.
lymph system, which lets out under the skin, and you can see it and track it and trace it. And so when you know how to look for the evidence, it's just there in your face, really simple. Yeah,
Yes.
it's just housekeeping. That's all it is.
It's surprisingly simple. I'm glad that you said that because a lot of times when we talk about these things, there's lots like I listened to one of your conversations and you were talking about things that were absolutely fascinating. And it might sound, because they're big words, it might sound like it's really complicated. It is not. And once we get past that, it's not complicated. We can do it in simple steps. The planet can heal just like the body can heal. And so what you're looking at in permaculture, to finally answer your question, I went off on a little bit of a tangent, but an important one, I believe, is we also, the planet, if it's an organism itself, has an innate ability to heal itself if we step back and help. One of the ways that we can do that is just composting. Like, I'm not a big fan of going to the garden store and buying fertilizer. Instead, I take all of my fruit scraps and my vegetable scraps when I'm juicing in the morning, and I will put them in a pile. And I'm a very lazy composter. There's a great book called Compost Everything by David the Good, which can teach you how to be a lazy yet successful composter as well. And then you're creating a closed loop. So you're taking the waste that you've created, you're putting it into a compost bin. It's being eaten alive by all these wonderful, amazing bacteria and microbes. And then you're putting that back into the soil. And then the soil is then giving you more plants that you can eat and digest and then put back into the composting. That's called a closed loop. And what permaculture is doing is it's creating a number of closed loops. It's creating a number of stacking functions. For example, one stacking function of my dog is he's a large black dog that likes to bark. He's got a really big bark. And that is safety for me, that no one's going to break into my house with this big, gigantic dog barking. And I also compost his feces because I know what he
Oh,
eats. He's not on any medication. Yes.
yeah.
And so I don't have
I've never
livestock
heard of
in the
that.
suburbs. It's amazing.
We use the lawnmower and it goes back into the grass.
There you go. That works too. Yeah, if you take it and put it in, I do grass clippings and then dog feces, and then I just water it a little bit in a plastic bin because I do want to keep it away from my other compost. And then I throw a few worms in from my worm bin. And as long as you don't feed those worms anything else, because they will choose a strawberry over dog feces, as long as you just allow them to eat that, in 2 years, I have this incredible compost that I then, just to be safe, because again, it's dog feces, so it's different
Yep.
than rabbit feces, which you can just throw in the garden. I then use it to plant trees, and it's remarkable. It's absolutely amazing. But that is a stacking function. My dog does several things. He comforts me. He's a really
Yeah.
fun walking partner. He has a good bark, and he creates fertilizer for me.
And he recharges you because animals connect with the earth, the Schumann resonance. They discharge the positive energy, that static energy. And then they
Yes.
come and give you a cuddle. And then that rebalancing transfers to the owner or the people patting the dog.
Yes.
It's
No,
another perfect system.
it's another perfect system. And you know how dogs shake? They're shaking off whatever excess energy they have.
Yeah, I thought they were saying no.
Sometimes they might be. When they're shaking that energy, I heard recently, or maybe I read it, that as humans, we dance to do the similar, because it's kind of hard for us to shake the same way dogs shake. We just don't have it in us. But dancing can kind of reset your nervous system.
Well, yes, because it's to music, and that's very right brain. And I think
Mm.
we're in left brain way too much. So that
Mhm.
balances the brain hemispheres better. And of course, they've done studies with people with Alzheimer's, and when they play music that they like, they remember, their memory comes back very strongly in tune with, along with the music. It's because it's accessing a different part of the brain. It is very fascinating. And so getting to aging, I mean, if we don't pay attention to cleaning up the mess inside the body and looking after the microbiome and our colonies, our beneficial, friendly bacteria, then we age prematurely. Everything gets dead like dead soil. So when I speak to farmers, they get it straight away. I said, when you want to plant fresh vegetables, like good, healthy vegetables, you need to make sure the soil has the right mineral balance, the right pH, water, sunshine, all the environmental conditions, and of course, no toxic elements. Just make sure you don't use chemical fertilizers, which has fluoride. And fluoride blocks magnesium. So there are many chemical products that we are exposed to potentially that can block magnesium. Magnesium is our electrolyte, master mineral electrolyte. It's the one mitochondria need to have to make ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So that's our electrical energy currency. And when magnesium is very low, mitochondria slow down energy production, and they can't use the oxygen in an acidic environment. So they go, eat more sugar, eat more carbs, so I can produce electrical energy using anaerobic methods, so without oxygen. But that then produces more acid, so it's a downward spiral. It's like a temporary fix, but then it has other side effects. And then that acidic environment causes the candida fungus to grow. And so you can attract other bad bugs. You can get very sick, you can get infections, you can get colds and flus, the immune system can be struggling. So then you get antibiotics from the doctor. That kills more of the beneficial microbiome that's trying to protect you, kills the bacteria, but doesn't kill the fungus. So then the fungus says, yoo-hoo, got no other bacteria here in my way, let's go to town. And it starts to multiply and multiply and multiply. So you get this downward cascade until you recognize that you need to change that environment and give it a good clean up and a good wash out.
Yes, and it really is that simple. I think that what people forget or don't even realize, until I cleaned up my gut, I have been using the GAPS protocol, gut and physiology syndrome
Yes,
by
I know
Dr.
that.
Natasha. Yeah,
Natasha
great.
Campbell McBride, she's
Yes.
fantastic. Yeah.
She's fantastic. And I remember 2 weeks in, because I was suffering from a chronic illness and I was getting better, but very slowly. And when I went to this, it's a very regimented practice, but you are cleaning it up. I had done 15 years of no refined sugar, but I was sneaking in carbs in different sugar, but it was carbs in different ways. And I was doing
Yep.
processed foods, but they were organic.
Yeah.
And it was madness.
White flour, processed white flour, behaves in the body just like sugar. You may as well be eating tubes of sugar.
Yeah, I would even go as far to say that like an abundance of potatoes, like yeah, it's a whole food, but
Yeah.
it's a
High
lot of
glycemic
carbs.
index. Yeah.
That's right. And
So it goes
so
straight away into
it
that
goes
sugar system.
straight away. And so
Yeah.
especially if your body's been beat up by it in the past. And so what I recognized 2 weeks in is that I started sleeping like I slept when I was 6 years old, which means my head would hit the pillow and I would go to sleep. And I
Out like a
used to
light.
be out like a light. And so I started reading up, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Why is my sleep suddenly? And what I learned was that a lot of harmful bacteria is nocturnal. And so that bacteria was keeping me awake, and it was keeping me
Ah,
awake. It felt like thoughts or planning, but I was exhausted. In Chinese medicine, there's
yep.
a Chinese term, but it's wired and tired. You're exhausted, but
Yes.
you're wired.
Almost everyone's like that these days in a big city.
Yeah, in a big city, which has to do with the EMFs and
Yes.
other things that are
Ele-
occurring.
el- electrical leakage, in addition
Yes.
to the EMFs, are now turning up the 5G. Then they
Yes.
even want to go to 6G. Well, we don't actually need it. It's not going to enhance our lifestyle in any way, shape, or form.
I didn't need 5G. We were doing just fine. We
No,
were doing just fine behind it without it. But
yeah,
and what happens with this electrical leakage and the EMFs and the radiation is that we are actually feeding the microbes with that as well. And people don't
yeah.
realize that. So if you've got a leaky gut, if your microbes are all over the place, that might be one of the reasons why you're not sleeping well.
And also, when the body's resources get low and magnesium drops, we feel more stressed, we become more sensitive because it's the body's way of sending out more adrenaline, cortisol, more stress hormones to create action because it wants you to do something about the low resources and the dehydration. When you lose magnesium out of cells, they also lose moisture and they start to become more dehydrated. That means waste gets stuck and the electrical system can't flow. Everything starts to get clogged pipes. So when I talk to a plumber and explain all that, they get it straight away. And then what happens with the acidic element when you get a lower pH? It attracts calcium to settle because calcium is an alkalizing mineral, and the body says, oh, well, that's plan B. I don't have enough magnesium or bicarb soda or other alkalizing elements. I'm just going to pull calcium out of the bones and then drop it onto the lining of the arteries and the vessels because we can't afford the body's resources can't afford to have the blood circulation stop. Got to feed the heart, got to keep that body alive. But what happens is there's another side effect. The calcium tends to get stuck and settle in the soft tissue and make things harder. And so that creates more pressure in the whole cardiovascular system. So your body has to work harder to push the blood through vessels that aren't stretchy and flexible like they need to be. So magnesium and calcium are antagonistic. They need to be at a certain ratio to one another. So magnesium rules. If it's the other way around, calcium becomes a bully in the body and magnesium is then pushed to the back. So we need to reverse that. By increasing magnesium, we start to, bit by bit, re-establish the balance. And that's when you were talking about the Chinese, that's that yin-yang balance, that you have too much of something, it pushes something else out of the way and it creates a cascade of reactions. But if we go back to nature, we go back to the way we should be, it's like a factory reset, right, from nature. We have to clean out the rubbish. If you have a messy house, what do? You have to take everything out, really start from scratch, have a spring clean. And that's what you need to do with your body. You need to ask a professional because sometimes you can detox and it can have deleterious side effects if you're storing a lot of toxins in your fat cells and then suddenly they get dumped into circulation. It can give you bad side effects. So you need some coaching from professionals that have walked this path before, that have done it before with others, and that know how to very gradually move you back into the balanced position, to remove the waste, to restore your electrical nervous system, your cardiovascular system, so everything flows and moves the way it needs to. And getting back to the permaculture, so your book talks about people being able to turn their little backyard plot into a garden that they can harvest and grow organic food and recycle the good microbes that they're growing. Around and around in a loop it goes. Tell us more about how people can set that up.
One more thing about permaculture in terms of what you were just talking about as well is you're talking about detoxing and it not being surgical. The same thing happens with permaculture. You don't go out and dig up the weeds because that actually affects the microbiome of the soil. So instead, you plant good things that will crowd out the difficult plants, the plants that you don't want, or you do some heavy mulching to crowd it out instead of ripping things out of our bodies. And I think that's what you're talking about in terms of fat cells as well. The book itself, I love permaculture. So the book itself talks about being able to be a homesteader and using the principles of permaculture in any body and in any location. For example, you can be a homesteader in an urban area with just a windowsill garden. And if you wanted to start, you're in your apartment and you love
So
the
just
idea.
some herbs or something.
That's exactly right. Just go buy
cherry
a little,
tomatoes.
yes, or a little basil plant, right? And snip off a few pieces of those basil. You are already starting to get some beneficial microbes. You're already, and then if you start fermenting it, like you take some of those cherry tomatoes, you put them in with some basil and then some brine, which is just salt water, and you let it sit
Oh,
for
yum.
7 days.
I'm
Oh
getting
my
hungry.
goodness. They're so pretty. It's just the most beautiful gift you can give someone.
How
But it
long does it
also
take for them to ferment to the
it
right level?
it depends on where you live. So where I live, it can be 4 days if it's really hot. Usually I try to let it sit for 7 days and you're just
Hmm.
checking it every day. And then once you put it in your fridge, it can last for weeks. So it actually does
Yeah.
preserve your foods and it increases the vitamin content in your foods. So and the micro and
Yep.
I
And
often
they
say,
taste much better as well.
oh my goodness, it's just delicious.
Yep.
I did a 7 month ferment. So I had cabbage on my sauerkraut cabbage on my
Mhm.
counter for 7 months
Yep.
and it's smooth and it's easily digested. And
Yep.
1 teaspoon of that equals these more than the fancy bottle of probiotics that you buy at the supermarket for $58. 1 teaspoon of homemade sauerkraut has more diverse and more sorry, probiotics
Yep.
than that fancy bottle. And a lot of people don't realize that.
So you just need like a little condiment on your dinner plate, like a little bit of kefir, a little bit of homemade sauerkraut, fermented
Yes.
vegetables. And a lot of Asian cultures do that normally. They've done it for millennia. I guess they recognized a long time ago if you eat well and look after the gut microbiome, you do the most fantastic poos. And you feel
Oh,
great. You feel
yes.
like jumping out of your skin.
Yeah, I
Remember the
have a
dog that rolls around on the grass? Because dogs are
oh,
really happy when they have a good evacuation.
there's so well, if you ever see me rolling around on my grass, that's probably why. Because it is, I used to have to explain what a good poo is to my patients because a lot of Americans don't talk about poo. Like they're just resistant. We've been told that you just don't talk about that. And it's one of the basis for health. And
Yeah.
so I had to re-educate my patients by saying, listen, I want you to have a zippity doo dah day poo. I want there to be a bluebird on your shoulder afterwards. Like you are
Yeah.
so happy.
Yeah.
And when you have a healthy one,
Yep.
your body really does feel that way.
It does. And it almost feels like an internal bowel massage, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because you're getting that wonderful peristalsis happening because the gut microbiome contribute, their byproducts help the smooth muscles lining of the bowel to expand and contract.
Hmm.
So we need those gut microbiome to help the whole process. And if we have the good gut microbiome, they also create a mucosal lining on the gut lining that's very protective, that stops toxins from going back into the body. And it makes things more slippery on the inside. And it's like everything works better.
Yes, you should be sitting down on the toilet. Everything should be coming out very easily with no strain, and you should be up and ready to rock and roll within a minute. That's how a healthy bowel movement works, and you should
Yep.
feel really good afterwards. No cramping, no difficulty. Stool shouldn't be loose. In Chinese medicine, we really like to see a banana-shaped poo.
Yep.
And so I'll get patients that are just like, oh, my poo's fine. I poo every 3 days, but I've always been that way. Well, just
Mm,
because you've always been that way
it's not
does not
good.
mean, right?
Mm-mm.
That just means you've been ill for quite some time.
Yeah, well, children can be born into the world with pre existing conditions. If the parents haven't addressed some of their health issues, we can pass things on epigenetically. And then
Yes.
it's hard work for that child or that human being to readjust and recalibrate and go back to, you know, the right level
That's right.
because they've got to unravel old knots.
That's exactly right. Now, can I ask you my questions about magnesium,
Oh,
pretty
sure, go
please?
ahead.
Because how
Because
often will I be able? Yeah,
we
we're
got
nearing
five
the end.
minutes.
Okay, good. Then I've done it just in time. So, can you tell me, in layman's terms, what happens when magnesium reduces pain?
So it directly suppresses the stress hormones, adrenaline. Several studies have shown it has a direct suppressive effect. And so simply by relaxing pressure,
Hmm.
because the pressure is what causes pain, it opens up vessels and channels. And it also, you need magnesium to make elastin, all the proteins. So that makes everything stretchy and flexible. We need magnesium to bring water into the cells. So as a muscle contracts, the cell membrane channels let magnesium out and calcium moves in, and calcium has an attractive force, so it pulls things together. It pushes water out of the cell and muscle fibers can squeeze. But then in the relaxation phase, you need to kick the calcium out of those channels and pull the magnesium back in. And with the magnesium comes the water as well. So those muscle cells reinflate. So this is the expansion and contraction phase of how calcium and magnesium work together. When they're in the right ratio, we go from one state to another as is needed. You know, when you want to run, when you want to do some exercise, you got to be able to squeeze, but then you can't stay squeezed, right? And a lot of people are ending up with like rocks in their muscles because the calcium's just staying there and storing and getting, you know, making everything harder and harder. And that means that you've got a more suffocated system. It's not getting the blood flow. It's not getting the electrical energy passing through. So as an acupuncturist, you know that when people get sick, it's because their electrical system got blocked somewhere. And what you're doing with the points is reconnecting the electrical conductivity of those threads, those cables, those invisible cables. But they'll go back together again if that person hasn't cleaned out the rubbish and addressed this depositing of waste products that aren't moving and being dealt with. And of course, lifting magnesium creates more energy in the system. So the mitochondria then respond by creating more energy. Of course, you've got to exercise. You've got to put more oxygen into your body. You've got to keep away from the sugar and the processed carbs and go a little bit more towards keto, maybe not full keto. It's not for everyone's cup of tea, but so low carbohydrate generally. And then your body can move back into the fat metabolism. It can start to go into ketogenics and dissolve your unwanted fat cells and drop the toxins out of the body. You've got to drink a lot of water. Water and magnesium go together like a hand in a glove. You need the magnesium in the water to make the water more hydrating. Without the magnesium, the water goes through you too fast. So cells need to have magnesium in the water to be able to suck up the water and do that rinsing and flushing. So, oh my gosh, it's like over 300 different jobs individually magnesium does because it's the power plug. So if you think of your computer and you've got a great hard drive and keyboard and software and all the bits top of the range, but you're not plugging it into the power source. There's no electricity, nothing's going to work, right? Or you might have a brownout, just lower energy. Then you're on safe mode and things aren't working optimally. And that's a little bit like the body. It's not working optimally. It's okay. And then when resources are low, the body panics and says, I haven't got enough water, I haven't got enough magnesium, haven't got enough resources, do something. So it gives you the stress hormones to create an action effect. So then you go to the doctor and you get medicines that numb and dumb everything down. So you lose all the messages coming through of what you really need to be doing, right, to keep that body healthy. Just numb and dumb it is not the answer, right?
No, absolutely not. Well, you just saved me from hours of reading through medical texts to get that answer because I have looked for it and no one has explained it to me.
I'm
quite
writing
as
a
well as
book
you did.
now. Yeah, I've
Are
got to
you? Thank
do it in.
goodness.
I've got to do it in layman's terms because they made it very complicated and invented 10 different words for the same thing. So
Yes.
I have to
Yes.
translate.
Make it accessible to all of us. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. And thank you for that explanation.
How can people reach you if they want to find more about what you've written in your book?
Thank you, Sandy. So my book, The Homesteader Mindset, is available on Amazon or anywhere you can buy your books. And you are welcome, listeners, to get a free gift from me. I have a homesteader habit tracker, which will allow you the opportunity to figure out how to create one small habit at a time and how to track it. And that can be reached, you can get that at my website, which is www.createwellnessproject.com/gift, GIFT. And thank you so much for having me on today, Sandy. I so appreciate it.
You're most welcome. It was very informative, and I'm so happy you joined us. I'm sure a lot of people will get huge amounts out of it. It's just like getting back to the basics of what do we need to do to be well and happy and healthy.
That's exactly right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you liked this conversation and will share it with others. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to listen to other Body Charge conversations, click like, subscribe, the bell icon, and click all notifications. Subscribe to our newsletter to get updates on blogs, podcasts, videos, and magnesium special offers at electramagnesium.com.au. Relax, recharge, and recover.